Curtis, in one sentence, or let's see, like 2 sentences or less, tell me why Kratos was the worst character of all time before this game.
In 2 sentences or less. Okay.
Yes.
I will just go with 1 sentence.
Okay.
And that is, this is Sparta.
Basically, yeah. This is Sparta. Calliope, period. Zeus, period. Whatever gods Kratos wanted to yell at.
Yeah.
Was basically his character development.
Here's the thing, though, is like I don't not like Kratos pre PS4 God of War.
Sure.
Like,
sure.
Yes, his character was angry at 11 100% of the time, but it's not like he wasn't given reason to be mad. You know,
for sure.
it wasn't like he was just mad to be mad. Like, maybe, I mean, I guess in some respects you could say that maybe it got to that point. But you know, it's not like he was like there's reason. There was a backstory there. There is, I think in one respect, what makes a lot of the events of this game interesting is like it isn't like this is the first kid that he had. Like he had a family before this, like, and he screwed up. And so he knows he knows what is at stake now that he has a son. He has gone through it, and so I think that's kind of something that makes this new entry pretty interesting as well. So I don't know, like I've never really been the person who's like, oh, Kratos is, I don't like Kratos because all he is angry. It's like, well, okay, but I don't know. There's a reason for it.
Yeah. I'd agree.
That's not.
I didn't think he was the worst.
Yeah, that's not to say that I am. Like, obviously, there is a significant difference in the way his character is portrayed, and he is a significantly better character now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and even to get in, like, before we get into what this short little video podcast thing is about, the new God of War that is on PlayStation 4, I felt like the PSP Ready at Dawn God of War games were like the games that actually kind of drew out more of his character development with other people. Because even in Chains of Olympus, there's a scene where it's not like heaven or whatever, but he reunites with Calliope for a little bit and then has to like leave her again. And then in Ghosts of Sparta, there's the whole thing with his brother Deimos and whatnot. And then it kind of felt like you got a little bit of that in God of War 3 with Pandora, who was kind of like the Calliope stand-in, where like they were trying to give Kratos to care about the girl, which he kind of did in the end. But yeah, like at least the other ones was pretty much, you know, it's just one bloody death to the next, pretty much. But yeah, so this takes place after God of War 3. Kratos has destroyed all of Greece. Basically, it's in ruin. And I don't know if they ever said how long this game takes place after God of War 3. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. They gave a specific time frame. It's definitely implied that it's been a while. It's been a good deal of time. Because it definitely sounds like, from some of the things Kratos has to say about Atreus' mother and the type of person she was, it definitely seems like they are like he already has a whole other history that we have not even learned about leading up to Atreus' birth and his childhood. So it definitely seems to be implied that it's been a long time, but it's not clear. We just know that he's been in hiding, and trying to basically, seemingly attempting to live out the rest of his days, just like away.
In solidarity,
in solidarity, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, he meets up with. He has a wife and a son. It's kind of where the events of this game takes place, and we just kind of gonna go through a lot of the big highlights. I'm sure for those who have beaten the game. You know, you've probably listened to other spoiler casts and whatnot, so we're just gonna probably do the big moments and talk about our take. And yet again, yes, there will be full spoilers for God of War, as I'm sure you've seen in the description.
Right from the beginning. I don't think. Yeah, I think. Pretty early on, we'll probably have some pretty heavy spoilers. And yeah, I mean, other than that, like you said, just kind of sharing our own take on the game itself, which
right.
probably my favorite of the year thus far.
Yeah, I would probably say so
right next
as well.
to Celeste, I think, at the moment.
Okay.
So
yeah. So I have a little bit of prologue stuff. Basically, the end of the prologue area, we get introduced to the stranger. What, like, when he knocked on the door, did you think he was just like a random dude? Did you think he was part of the like pantheon of Norse gods? Who'd you think he was?
I thought he was Loki.
Okay.
I wondered. I wasn't sure, and my knowledge of Norse mythology is lacking for sure, especially in comparison to prior God of War games, where I at least knew a good amount of the different gods that we would be going up against. In this new trilogy, or whatever it will end up being. There's only a few that I know. And so my immediate thought was, okay, like, this guy obviously is important. And so I just kind of was like running through my head of like, who are the characters I know, who are the gods I know from Norse mythology, and like, obviously it wasn't Thor. Like, that seemed pretty clear. Right. So I figured, like, maybe Loki, especially the way he was talking. He definitely seemed like maybe a good fit for Loki, or at least the Loki I know. And that's the other thing, is this game has definitely driven me to want to learn more about Norse mythology. It's something I've wanted to dig into for a long time. I just never have gotten around to it. And so my concept of characters like Loki and Thor and Odin has definitely been colored by certain forms of media, not just superhero movies, probably mostly Marvel movies, which I feel confident in saying that they are probably not completely in line with what the actual Norse mythology has outlined, but that was my immediate thought. My immediate thought with Loki. That was not the case, of course.
Yeah.
But
and we don't I think we don't find out that he's actually Balder until we're climbing the mountain where Mimir is at. I think it's maybe at that point that we actually find out that's who the stranger is.
It's a good ways in, for sure.
And I really liked, and I'd listened to a few of the other spoiler cast, just mostly with that had like Corey Barlog was a lot of those. Talking about that they really planned it deliberately to have the stranger and Balder show up at the beginning and then have him like disappear for like 4 or 5 hours, only to then reappear. And I really enjoyed that, because it was always kind of like that presence that was still there. But to get back to that opening moments, they have a little words. The stranger, or Balder, kind of throws some like little light punches, but then he ends up
in that fight.
Go ahead.
Itself is I think I love that it's at the beginning, because this is this game is a dramatic shift, not just in tone, but also just camera view. The way it plays is completely different from any God of War game prior to it. And one of the things that I have wondered about leading up to this game's release is like, well, how will they handle big set piece moments? We're used to God of War games being able to pull out the camera really far so you can see how tiny Kratos is compared to these giant monsters or gods that he is fighting or crawling on top of. And so it's one of the things, like, I wonder, what the impact of this game will be like, because it's always going to be pretty close and pretty intimate. And I think this fight does a really fantastic job of kind of opening the game in a way and just showing you, like, don't worry about it. Because this is one of the standout fights in the game, and definitely going to be a moment from this game that I remember. Like, at the end of the year, I'll look back on this game and be like, this was one of the highlight moments for me. Like, it felt like I've seen other people compare it, like, it felt like a true superhero fight in a lot of ways, where you just have two infinitely powerful people just duking it out 1v1. Like, I love the sequence where you're in kind of the open area. There's a lot of trees, and as like you land a big hit on Boulder, he'll go flying back, or you'll go flying back, either way, and you crash through trees and they just come crumbling down. It's like a really, and especially considering just how visually impressive this game is. Like, it's a spectacle, as well as being like a really good fight, like just on a pure mechanics level. It's spectacular.
There's a one, probably my favorite part in the fight that I can think of right now is Baldur kind of hits you up against a tree, and the tree like gets broken off, and then Kratos kind of like leans up and like puts his arm on the tree, and then like it's just the cue that he's just gonna take that thing and just whack him with it. I thought that was great. There's so many just explosive moments, even when they're it really reminded me of, and this probably is not going to be the first time I'm going to bring this up, Revenge of the Sith, where like Obi-Wan and Anakin are like doing that dumb force push against each other in that fight, and then this is one where they're like interlocking fingers and like the whole like ground is like breaking around them. I thought that was kind of a neat moment.
But there's something exciting about, whether it's a TV show, anime, game, or whatever, where you have two characters, and now, in this case, it's one of these characters we've only just been introduced to. But when you think about, what you were saying, like, two characters, 1v1, characters that have a lot of history, even like Dragon Ball Z, I think of, where you have these characters just pitted together, and they just are going at it, not, like, neither of them letting up at all. And it just keeps going and going, and there's a lot of it's a very intense feeling. And this fight has it, and we don't even know who one of these characters are. Like, this is like completely new person, and what's really cool, like this is where we get into spoilers. Really, what's really cool about this fight is if you go back and think about it, there's when you first open the door, Baldur's saying some kind of mysterious and vague things, and I remember at the time thinking, oh man, like Odin like straight up knows who we are. He sent this guy after us, when in actuality, Baldur says something to the effect of, I thought you would be bigger.
Yeah, and I thought your kind was supposed to be so enlightened.
Right, and like I thought you'd be so much bigger than this. And like at the time you think, oh, interesting, that he would think that, when we don't realize that he's not talking about Kratos in that moment. Like, Kratos is not the person that he's come to find. And that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Especially, there's a lot of moments in this game that are like that. A lot of lines that if you look back on, or if you play a second time through, it's like, oh, that's what they were hinting at that right there, but we had no idea.
Yeah, again, just listen to more Cory Barlog chats, just how much just foreshadowing he just throws in your face that like you find out after the fact is incredible, which is other things I'll get to. Like, even if you want to get to it, the Blaze of Chaos being shown, but I didn't know what that was.
See him,
but and we finally know what the reason why he says to Atreus, like, never go down there. It's because he has the blades hidden right there. And that's something I never paid any attention to. But
so the Boulder fight wraps up. We get that line from him where he's like, I can't feel any of this. Which is great. Like, I love, like, that's the stuff I love. It's like, okay, yeah, like, it immediately tells me who this guy is, and the type of character he will be. And they don't let that up. Like, that's actually a significant arc for Boulder, which is great. But then from there, the journey begins, and we start to learn, or we meet Atreus, and we get to see the kind of the dynamic between Kratos and Atreus. And one of the things I love, especially, you see it a few times, is there's moments where they'll stop as they're on this like initial hunting trip, as like training, and you see Kratos try to like put his arm around his son, but he kind of stops, and there's that hesitance. But we see it a lot. Kratos is still like, Kratos has control of his anger, and it's something we see a little later on in the game with the the fact that Atreus also has some anger issues that he might need to deal with a little later, maybe in sequels to come.
Right.
But I love that they're using Kratos now as a character to try to teach his son and show his son that like anger is something that he needs to have control of. I feel like Kratos is a character, like he is now someone who recognizes the things he has done in the past, and he's not necessarily trying to atone for it. Like I love there's a line, well, we'll get to the whole Blades of Chaos segment, but there's a line in the game where I'm no longer your monster or something like that.
It's a great it's a great line.
And it's like, yeah, that is everything. Yeah, that's amazing. Like that is everything, because Kratos is not, it's not like he's gonna go around and say like, oh no, I'm fine, I'm good, like I will repent for everything I've done. It's like, no, Kratos understands who he is, and he knows that there is no changing that. But I love that he recognizes that for Atreus, like, not all is lost. Like, he recognizes that he can, at the very least, teach his son good values or good ways to defend himself, and we definitely see that with his perception of gods in this game, the way he talks about gods, especially to his son.
Right. Yeah, so there's a moment that I don't think anybody really talks about that I find really interesting, is when you are kind of on that journey. This is kind of like right before you meet Brock for the first time. Is you get into this kind of underground area, and there's actually like other humans, like survivors, that you have to end up fighting.
Yeah.
If you remember this, and they don't ever go to that ever again. But it's a moment where Atreus has to kill one. And he had the moment with the deer earlier, the moose or whatever, earlier in the game, that he was struggling to put the knife in. But then just after him having to kill a human, that like he just completely breaks down, and that's the part where you kind of have to like egg him on, being like, come on, like lower the little rope chain thing down. It just really shows his, I guess, his like innocence, and even just how he doesn't know anything else, that like Kratos can lift all these massive boulders and trees. Yeah, it's like, because he doesn't know any different, right. Like, he just expects that's what people can do.
He's been so sheltered that Kratos' insane strength is weirdly normal to him. Like it definitely seems like he understands that the things Kratos is capable of doing is maybe not something everyone can do, but there was even a few different lines from Atreus throughout the game where he's just like, oh, he's always done that. I don't know, like I never questioned it. That's always just something he's done. He could just lift giant boulders. That's one thing I love. It's so like in a lot of prior God of War games, or a lot of video games in general, when you're trying to open a big door or pick up something big, there's always that QTE just button matching sequence. Right, and what I love so much in this game, with like a couple exceptions, they save it for like key moments. Almost every time in this game where you walk up and have to like lift something huge, like you would in any other game, like there's like a pillar that's fallen down that's blocking the path, and so he like, has to lift it up so the Atreus crawl under, and then he goes under. He just picks it up. There's no button mashing. There's nothing like that. Yeah. And I love that they did that, because it's, whether intentional or not, to me, it was just a really good way of showing, like, look, like, after everything Kratos has been through, there's no reason he should be struggling to pick any of this stuff up.
Right. I knew that was something they talked about even with, like, God of War Ascension. That was like, why is it Kratos has all this struggle of lifting up these red orb chests? And then they had, I think, even in God of War Ascension, and then even this one, he literally just, like, punches the chest. Which I think is so cool.
And I saw some people say, and it's not something I usually like think about too hard, this whole like ludonarrative dissonance thing a lot of people bring up with like the Uncharted games, for instance, is like I saw someone mention that like God of War actually handles that really well. And it's like the one time that I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. Like actually, like a lot of things within this God of War game make sense. There's especially like the way they handle side quests, and just in regards to the main quest itself, it doesn't feel like when you're running around doing side missions or exploring. It doesn't feel like you're just putting things off in like a way that doesn't make sense for the story. It just works in a way,
Yeah.
and a lot of that is because one cool thing I like about this, at least this initial game in the kind of God of War Norse series that we're in now, is so much of this game is like a mystery. Like the gods themselves are, there's a few in this game, but they're all absent. With the exception of maybe an after credits scene or some other things, right? But we hear them, we hear of them, but we hardly ever see them.
Right.
Which I really like, because a lot of this game is a bit of a slow burn story-wise, especially in the first half, or maybe even first like 70% of this game. It's very much a slow burn, and I don't know if disappointing is the right word. The bummer is that this is not the game that we're gonna get to see and fight all of these crazy gods. That'll come later.
For sure.
This is the setup game, and it's setting up some pretty crazy stuff from what it appears to be. But I love how much of it feels like a mystery, and maybe part of that's because of my lack of knowledge of this mythology.
Right.
But it's fun to hear tales of Odin and Thor. So when those names get dropped by certain characters, it's like, oh man, like, yeah. And so when the time comes 5 years from now, in God of War 2 or whatever, when these characters show up, it's going to feel really impactful.
Yeah, and I think we can kind of, not to jump immediately to the end, but did you think, like around this point that we're thinking of, did you think that Baldur would have been the final boss?
No.
Or do you think like, okay, we did get to Thor and like we're going to fight Odin in the end?
Yeah, it's tough because I think part of me, like maybe in the beginning you wonder, like, how is this going to wrap up? Because it's like, well, they're not just going to do this in one game. Right? Like this,
right.
And it's not necessarily that they're milking it. It's like there's a lot of material here, and there's a lot of gods. Like games of this budget and size, like I don't know if you can expect like a dozen really significant, crazy boss fights against gods. Like, they'll split it up into 2 or 3 games probably. So a lot of the game, I wondered like, will we see Loki? Will we see Thor? Will we see Odin? Will there be like at least one other big like major god that I know, that I've heard of at least?
Right.
Baldur, I didn't necessarily think, at least at the beginning, because it seemed to imply that he was sent by somebody. And so I at least thought like, okay, maybe whoever sent him will be it. But that's not to say that I'm disappointed that he was. I mean, that last boss fight is pretty insane, for what it's worth.
For sure.
But definitely I wondered, at least about, the certain other gods. So I wonder, like, will they appear? How, like, when will we see them, if we do? But even then, like, even though we don't see, I mean, we see Thor, but Thor and Odin are it's by all accounts not in this game. We just hear of them, and it's not a bad thing that they aren't. I'm okay with them being saved for later entries for sure, especially those 2 characters. But we still have plenty of other characters that we meet, for sure. The witch being one.
That was one of the next people that we meet. But I didn't know if you wanted to also we could talk about them maybe together later, but Brock and Sindri, if you want to,
they're great.
We can probably we can get to both of them at the same time. But yeah, we at the time we only know her as the Witch of the Woods, and even that's the what they have on the subtitles as well. Like they for the longest time, like we didn't know her name was actually Freya, so it was just like the Witch of the Woods. So we end up trying to like target practice or whatever Atreya says, on a boar that has all this mystical powers. And you find that she lives in this house underneath a turtle.
Oh, man.
Basically condemned to Midgard by Odin.
Yeah.
In the end. She's just kind of a mystery. I don't really remember a ton, I guess, at the very beginning. But one of the early things is Freya tells Atreus to go find some herbal thing, and Freya just immediately looks at Kratos and says, "I know you're a god."
Right. Yeah, she's a super cool character. I don't know, again, and part of, again, like, for me, my perception of this story going through in certain characters, a lot of it is derived from a lack of knowledge of this specific mythology. And so I never really, considered, I figured, as you've seen with any kind of character that isn't outright named at the beginning, it's like, okay, whoever they are, that'll probably be a pretty big thing. Would never have guessed who she was the mother of, for sure.
Yes.
At least in the at the beginning. But I like how she treats Atreus and how she reacts to Kratos. Like she's almost a different person to the two of them.
Right. Yeah. For sure.
And she definitely serves a very substantial role in kind of leading both of them on the path that they need to go through into this game. Mm-hmm. But anything I say about her really comes down to the end and how her arc wraps up with her son. And
we'll talk more about her. Mm-hmm. But even a part that's pretty much right after that. Well, actually, I did want to stop one more again. Mm-hmm. We're kind of jumping the gun a little bit. I was really interested about the boar that they talked about. How it was like a person.
Yeah.
Like the soul is living now in this boar. I was like, I thought they were going to maybe explain a little bit more of that, but maybe that's part of that. Hey, something more to come, mm-hmm. perhaps. But I don't know if you had anything thoughts on the animals she had necessarily.
Nothing in particular. I just love the setting of her home. Mm-hmm. The moment that sure. we see the turtle rise and the home come up underneath of it, mm-hmm. that stuff I adore. I love that stuff. I always think about the game White Knight Chronicles.
Okay.
Where there is a sequence in that game where you go to a town and there's an entire city that is just built on the back of this giant turtle. It's just walking around. Yeah, and stuff like that I love. I'm like, yeah, that's doesn't matter if it doesn't really make too much sense, but I love it.
I felt like I had to walk up to the house and take out my ocarina and play new wave mm-hmm. bossa nova like Majora's Mask or whatnot.
It creates a really interesting setting that this world is mm-hmm. that this game is taking place in. There's a lot of things like that where you see it and you go this is really interesting and different from what we're used to in God of War, and I really I appreciated that, especially when you do reach the Lake of the Nine, mm-hmm. and of course once the serpent has come up and so you're on the I don't remember the bridge, I don't remember the name of it.
Yes.
Being able to stand on that bridge and look out in all the different directions, it's a really unique location for God of War. And it's nothing to say. It's I feel like we don't even have to talk about how great this game looks because everybody knows in the fact that they did pull off the just one shot thing with the camera is insane. It's something you just mm-hmm. don't even think about after you've played for a few hours. You just don't even consider the fact that there are no cuts in this game.
Mm-hmm. And even my, not to necessarily mean my game design or whatever hat, but I think about you mentioned all the things where he's lifting stuff up mm-hmm. for people to move. I just saying yep, that's a loading screen, basically
sure.
Loading the next area kind of thing. We met the serpent. Maybe one of the most beautiful scenes in the game, with just the scales and just the vibration of the nostrils. Of the serpent.
Yeah.
And we can talk more about him, but
we'll definitely talk more about the serpent a bit later, for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that everything just kind of wraps in and around itself. But we do meet Sindri next, and we can throw Brock and Sindri into this.
Yeah.
Which one was your favorite? Would you say?
Oh man. Maybe Sindri. I don't know if I have a favorite. I love them
Mm-hmm.
both equally.
Yeah.
I love their dynamic. I love the kind of like rivalry that they have going on.
Mm-hmm.
The I don't remember exactly what they say to each other. I remember really liking what happened when they like first meet each other, or like when they
Right.
meet up, like,
Yeah.
and you are there to see it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember the exact wording. It's been a while now, but I remember really liking that sequence and just
Yeah.
thinking like, that's about what I expect from the two of them.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, with Brock being pretty foul
Mm-hmm.
mouthed, and like I think I can say for both of us, we're not big on like cuss words a lot, but just kind of like the way that Brock was able to just kind of throw those words
Mm-hmm.
out, I thought was pretty funny
And
and effective.
and just from like a gameplay perspective, I love how it's not all of these side quests are related to them, but a
Mm-hmm.
good amount are, and I do really appreciate the way that's handled. I think that just these side quests on a whole in this game are done really really well.
Yeah, it's kind of like whenever you would go into a new area, that would be like a new shop that Brock or Sindri would be at, and it's like right before you go into this new area, they kind of tell you like, "Oh, here's what to expect," kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing, and then when you leave, they're like, "Oh, did you find what you were looking for?" And then you can have those optional dialogue things with
Yeah,
them at their little mini
there's a lot of stuff
shops.
where you definitely, and we felt it for years, and this is just another game that kind of cements it. Between Sony Santa Monica and Naughty Dog especially, it's present in other first party Sony games, but it definitely feels like between those two studios, you definitely feel with each new entry that they learn from each other.
For
In this
sure.
game, there's a lot of ways in which Naughty Dog handles things in their games.
Mm-hmm.
Is present in God of War, especially the way story is handled, the way characters are written, the way like the banter between characters is done as you're like playing the game itself.
Right.
The way a lot of that stuff works because it's worked really well for them in the
Yeah.
past, and so it's something that has kind of it's I guess kind of new, definitely kind of new for this entry in the God of War franchise, and it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
It works super well for them, and it
Yeah.
makes for whether Kratos or Atreus or Brock and Sindri, like it makes for like really interesting characters, and the way all that stuff is done without like kind of taking you away from the game itself
Right.
is just really great, and it
Mm-hmm.
is just another small little thing that adds a good bit of polish to a game that for all for as impressive as it is visually, is pretty insane that it performs at the level that it does almost 100% of the time.
Yeah, and that's what I love about a lot of these like narrative games as a whole that are so impactful. Whether it be something like a Life is Strange, God of War, Last of Us, What Remains of Edith Finch, or like from 30-hour games to 2-hour games, that just they write this game, they have this whole set out, and then they just comb over it with a fine comb, and then they do it again and again and again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
Till just like every little thing is just overlooked, not overlooked, but kept on getting looked at
Mm-hmm.
and play tested, and just like what is like the best way we can make this the most impactful. I think that's what makes it so special, and definitely just the. I even wonder, this game was in development for 5 years, just like how many different takes of scenes they did, and I don't mean just like, if they would have to, do a scene like 30 times or whatnot, but I'm thinking like 100 or more of just like, what if they film a scene and they're satisfied with it, and then they film, like in 3 months they work on other stuff,
Right.
but then they're like, hey, we actually want to go back to this again, that will actually make this scene later on be even more impactful.
Yeah.
I love all of that stuff.
Or just to see what ended up being cut.
Yeah,
Especially
yeah.
from a story perspective, I would love to know like what stuff was cut, if there were any like boss fights that ended up getting
Oh,
cut.
sure. Yeah.
Because definitely like I think it was something I wondered again going in. There was a little bit of concern of like we haven't seen any major set piece moments really, but prior to release, which kudos to them. Like kudos
Mm-hmm.
for them for just have the restraint to hold back on that stuff and not show very much of this game at all. Because this game does still have some pretty crazy set piece moments and boss fights that we have come accustomed to in God of War. The perspective is different, but I think it still has the impact. Like the dragon fight is probably the big one, other than the final fight in the game. But the fight with the dragon, as you're riding that elevator up to the top of the mountain, and you first see it, and so there's that sequence there, like in the cave itself, and then you get to the outside, and you do the fight proper. And that entire like that, I felt like that was definitely the moment for me where it's like I've been waiting for this, and it did not let down, or it did not let me down.
Yeah, and even that dragon fight, I still think the part I still love so much is just Kratos just standing on the ground when he's defeated it, and then like the dragon like falling to the ground, and then just the camera right behind Kratos, and like the mouth of the dragon opens like when it's dying, and it slams down, and like Kratos is like standing like right in the mouth of like the dead dragon. I thought that was like right when that moment happened, I immediately just clicked the share button for a screenshot. I thought that was so cool. But yeah, even next, what do you think of Alfheim? Did you like that environment? This is the world of the elves. And the elf world.
Yeah, I remember being like really excited to get to the first like new realm, and it's again, this game is visually stunning, for sure. I liked that we went in kind of in the midst of a war almost between these like dark and light elves that I don't remember. They have names for them, I'm pretty sure, but I don't remember at the moment. But I like one of the first things you see is a dark elf killing another elf, and I think Kratos,
the light elves
are
I
don't remember.
I don't know.
I'm sure there's a name. I think they do. I don't remember. Anyways,
sure they do.
Regardless, you come in the midst of a war seemingly, and I like that. I like moments in games where you're kind of the third party at play here. Or you're just like, you're the spectator in some other thing that is happening at the moment. Yeah. Alfheim itself looked really great. I liked some interesting like puzzles there. And again, it was being able to kind of explore this other smaller like lake area. For some optional fights and different hidden areas. Like that was fun.
Right. Corey Barlog, I try not to, talk to other people's spoiler casts or whatnot, again, still, but mentioned that I guess Alfheim was a lot bigger than what it ended up being. And there's the part where Freya, and talking about the war, when Freya gets like sucked back to Midgard, because that's where she's kind of bound to, she's trying to hint of like, hey, like don't get involved. And at the very end, like when you're getting close to leaving Alfheim, when you're fighting like one of those dark elf generals or something like that, and he's basically saying something like, "You made a mistake," and that really wasn't alluded to like ever again, because you never, once you leave Alfheim, like you don't really come back to it, from what I remember. But another moment where you're kind of taking down the hives of the dark elves, and Kratos ends up stepping into the light, where he kind of has the memories of his wife Faye. I'd really need to go back and watch that section, because I don't really remember all that much happening, because I think he's just kind of reliving like actually kind of the events that have happened, and even the moments that will eventually happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some stuff in there about his son too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's kind of where he finds out his son, like, he doesn't trust him, or something like that.
But obviously, the big thing is that when he is pulled back out from that light, it's been some amount of time.
Yes,
unclear. But Atreus has taken it upon himself to mess up some dark elves pretty bad.
Right. And I think that line when Atreus pulls Kratos out of that light, I think is probably one of Atreus' strongest lines in the entire game. Just the part where Kratos is like, "Oh, I was only gone for a short time." It's like, "No, you were gone a really long time. Like, I saved you. I pulled you out." I think that some of that delivery right there was important. And I still can't get over the fact that he killed that many of the like dark elves. Like, he had the axe, yes, but I don't know. I didn't necessarily think that was a kind of moment. It was just kind of a moment. I was just like, oh, okay, sure. Like, okay, yeah, he killed a lot, but I don't know. I guess I just thought it was a scene that was just kind of like, nah, like he couldn't have killed all of them, right? Like I thought maybe something else had happened or somebody else came in and helped.
Well, I mean, I think considering what we now know about him, it's never necessarily, and even at the time, it wasn't something that I really like was in disbelief about. To me, it was more of an eye-opening or like an awakened moment of like, oh, okay, he might not realize his strength at the moment, but given the opportunity, I guess given the right amount of anger, Atreus is someone not to be messed with either. Although even though he might not necessarily have control over it at the moment, and we do see more of it later as well, but
yeah. So this is also a moment where Atreus kind of has one of his first, I guess, rebellious moments, I guess, let's say. This one much smaller than the one later. But Atreus basically telling Kratos, like, you didn't care about Mom. Like, you were never there. And then in the boat, Kratos has a line saying something like, something of like, I grieve differently than you, or like, I have my own way of grieving.
right.
And that was like Atreus is like really caught off guard. Like you were like, you actually were grieving, because he just kind of sees him from the outside. And, I feel like, not to get, too philosophical, but like that's kind of a society thing that like we see other people not doing what you expect. And then you kind of assume that, this is what this person's feeling, but it really isn't at all. So like Kratos, was going through his own kind of his, like, I don't know, his mourning basically that Atreus just never saw.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely shows just how much the two of them don't necessarily understand each other.
Sure.
Which I think is part of this game. It's Kratos and Atreus understanding who each other are on a kind of a more mental level rather than just you are my son, you are my father kind of thing. And that gets they dig into that a little bit more, but it's definitely it's as they progress, it's Atreus understanding who Kratos actually is, not just that he's a god, but also like, and some of it's left to be a mystery still. Like there's still some things that maybe haven't been revealed yet, but Kratos, later on to the game basically tells Atreus the truth, and that is of course a big moment that we'll get to. I'm trying to think of what happens next. Like, what's the next big thing after Alpine?
We start climbing the mountain a little bit more. We did already talk about the dragon, but then the next person we see is Mimir.
Yep.
The really knowledgeable person, basically sewn to a tree by Odin. So we actually find him first. He's talking to, I think it's Baldur and then Magni and Modi, who are the sons of Thor. And we basically end up chopping his head off and then taking it back to Freya. And there's just some of the great interaction between them two, especially when the Kratos, like Mimir is telling Kratos something, and Kratos like just doesn't want to hear it anymore. And Kratos goes like, I'm going to chop off your head now.
Yeah, and Mimir is like such an excellent addition as a third character for the journey. Mimir Mimir knows who Kratos is in a roundabout way. But yeah, it definitely adds a lot of comedic relief, definitely to the game, the way he reacts. And talks to various characters in the game. It's also where we learn that Jotunheim is actually the place that we're headed.
The highest peak in all the realms.
That is the place that we're going. And that was an exciting reveal. That was exciting. Like, oh, okay, cool. And one thing I want to add real quick is I kind of assumed from the start. I thought, okay, pretty early into the game, we'll spread the ashes,
right,
and then something will happen.
Then the real part 2 will happen.
Yeah, something will happen to kind of push them forward, rather than just continuing on this journey. I'm totally fine with how it ended up with this game just being the journey to get to the highest peak. But for a while there, I did think that that would be maybe like the first third or half of the game.
Right. Because I thought the same way about that's like, oh, we'll get rid of Baldur, by half of this game. He'll be gone, whatnot. We take Mimir to Freya. They have their little resurrection moment of just Mimir's head. And this is where now we call on the serpent. So we blow on the horn, getting into more foreshadowing that the serpent says something to Mimir, that he looks at Atreus and says, like, he looks familiar to him. I don't know if you've been hearing some of that talk or whatnot regarding Atreus and the serpent.
Yeah, so that's like the first hint. And for whatever, it's one of those things that should be obvious. There should be like a good thing to like latch onto of like, weird. But I never thought about it. Like, it never occurred to me what that could be hinting towards. Or that it could be hinting towards anything, rather. The reveal later is pretty is something for sure.
Yeah,
but at the time it was like, okay, cool. It really just anytime the serpent would speak, just you would feel its power, I guess. Like it was very impactful when it would speak, because it was just vibrations. It was very loud booming noise that was shaking the world around it.
I don't have a surround sound speaker set up in my house, but that would be something I think would be pretty incredible to listen to. But we're on our way to kind of the frozen area, whatnot. We're trying to get this little shard that ends up like breaking the magical locks off things. I can't remember exactly, but this is where we also really run into Magni and Modi, played by Troy Baker and Nolan North, which I didn't know which one was which, and I can't remember which one we kill first, but we kill one of them, and then the other one just kind of cowers away in fear.
Yeah, I was thinking, I think in the boss fight itself, it's just whoever you choose first, but I think after the fight there is one specific one you kill.
Because you actually are fighting both of them
at the same time
at that boss fight. Yeah. And then there's whatever the quick time event, or whatever the thing that when you press R3 to engage the like final blow, one of them ends up getting killed. I think basically gets the Leviathan axe like right dead straight in the head, or whatnot. I found that I love that moment of just like being able to fight them, because then that kind of showed like it is part of that like stranger in a strange land kind of thing, where it's like, here's this character that you really know, like have been with him for a long time, and you're actually like testing your might against like people from a completely different land. There was really a part like when I started that, I was like, I'm gonna show these people who they really are, basically. Like I really wanted to fight them and take them down.
I think what's so interesting about this game and the land we are in now, Kratos hasn't been nerfed at all.
Sure.
Like we have been through it with Kratos. We've seen his strength. We know what he's capable of doing. And so like, that first fight was Boulder. When you see just some guy walk up and be able to put up the same amount of fight with Kratos, like that means something. That's significant. And I don't think that's
Right.
to say like, oh yeah, Kratos is out of his comfort zone now. Like he's been out of the game for too long. He's rusty. I don't think that's the case at all. I think we're we are actually in a new land with gods that are as strong, if not maybe even stronger than Kratos, and that says a lot.
Right. Right.
That's meaningful, and like you just said, it's really impactful when we see him fight these gods or other creatures that are not just being pushed over easily.
Yeah, and I think even with that, like even with the Magni and Modi, like and even Baldur to an extent, like I feel like they all want like their best shot at Kratos. Like they're all like, I want to fight this guy. Like I want to see how tough he is. Like, oh, he's not that tough, or either they're trying to antagonize Atreus, which is a thing that happens fairly often in that. But we're on our way to Tyr's temple, and this is the beginning of the best 20 minutes of the entire game, I feel like, in my mind. Whichever one is either Magni or Modi come back and basically starts attacking Kratos, and Atreus tries to have his little own Spartan rage moment, but kind of ends up failing, and then his sickness kind of I guess kind of creeps in even more and takes over him. So now we have to take his body to Freya, and this is where the Blades of Chaos introduction moment happens again.
This moment could not have been done any better. Like
it's great.
They nailed it because it's there's the line where we get him back to Freya. We kind of understand what the stakes are. She says something to him, and because he has to go to Helheim, correct? If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And like we know the axe isn't going to do anything there, and so he's like, okay, I'll have to. Kratos says something to the effect of like having to go back to something that he never wanted to go back to.
Right.
And that at that moment, like it's one of those things where it's like.
He like touches wrist.
It's not straight up
whatnot.
confirmed. Like maybe there's still a chance that's not what it's gonna be. That it's not gonna be the Blades of Chaos. But from that moment up to like the next 15 or so minutes of going back home, that entire time I'm just thinking, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
Yeah. And even the line literally like right before that one, Freya goes like, the Helheim, do you know it? Or like the world of the hell or something, the world of the dead, do you know it? And Kratos goes, not this one. Like just those little lines of like, him being to Hades many times, but he doesn't know Helheim at this moment. And even I would say there's definitely before this section, I went out to eat with a friend and I was telling him about, the new God of War and whatnot. And I was basically telling him like, man, I really want like the Blades of Chaos to show up, and I really want Athena to show up. Because that was the thing, at least with Athena, I didn't think they were going to even touch on it all. Because, like, she's still kind of a presence at the end of God of War 3. So that it is, other than, because there's some things you can just have fan service and, like, that's just it or whatnot. But this is so expertly just woven into so many things. And I think, again, the biggest part of this is just the long, drawn out sequence of him just either taking Atreus all the way back to Freya and then him riding in the boat by himself, where the camera is just kind of rotating around Kratos the whole time. And there's like storms going on.
This is such a perfect example. Basically, this whole sequence of getting the blades back, and as well as the certain things that happen in Helheim before this God of War was even announced, before it was even leaked. Like, we all knew, like, okay, we're going to get a new God of War game. And at the time, my thought was, I'd really like a new mythology. I'd kind of like it if it was just a different character. Right, and then it leaks, and it's Kratos, and I'm like, all right, that's fine. We'll see what they do with it, but I'm really glad it's a new mythology. And Norse is cool. That was kind of one of the ones I was hoping it would be. And now, but then it was like, well, cool, but I hope they don't lean too much on the old stuff, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm sitting here and I'm like so glad that they did. I'm so happy. Like, fan service is fan service, yes, but like they earn it.
Absolutely.
And it's absolutely like I feel like, to me, like very strongly now, it's like this is something that needs to be in here. We need to have the moment where he returns to the Blades of Chaos. We need to have the moment where Athena says, like, you will always be a monster, and Kratos goes, well, I'm no longer yours. Like, we need that moment. We need the moment, or the moments in Helheim where we hear Zeus. You know, and we start to get a character in Kratos who is being taunted and haunted by his past.
Right.
And I think that matters, and I think that's significant, and I'm hoping and I imagine that's not something that's just going to go away in future titles. I think that's still something that will be a heavy presence and will only serve to further character development, probably not just for Kratos, but also probably for Atreus. And I think that's important. And I think they've already done a fantastic job with Kratos in this game. But I love the moment in Helheim where we hear Zeus and I go, oh man.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Oh. But to dial back, the Blades of Chaos. What's so great, and what's so great about this game being a slow burn, is we have a character in Kratos who is very much, any thoughts or emotions he has other than anger, he kind of keeps to himself. He's very introverted in that respect. And I love that a lot of the game allows you to just settle and stir on things in your own head as you're heading to the next objective. So the entire lead up to the Blades of Chaos, my thoughts are, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. But also, what is this even going to be like? Is it just going to be this like toned down weapon that I play for like a level? Is it like, there's no way it's going to, like, it can't, how is it even going to feel? Like, it's going to be so different. Like, and I honestly thought like it would just be a weapon that we used for one section and that would be it.
Same
and then
here.
You get them and you walk out of your house and a bunch of enemies show up, and immediately, like from the very first like swing of those blades that you take, immediately it's like, oh, they feel better than ever. This is the best they've ever felt. Like,
so I will say, even before that section where, when Athena shows up for the first time, I literally like cheered. Like I literally let out this and it's like her just sitting there, just this, it's almost like Mona Lisa smile kind of thing, just like literally just like, I'm still here, like basically to taunt you and remind you of your past. But when you get the blades, I had come off playing, I think, God of War 3 Remastered like a few weeks before.
Okay.
And you take that moment where you actually get control again, and I just stood there and nothing happened because I immediately went to square. I immediately started pressing square like the previous God of War games. And then remembering like, oh, right, I need to hit R1, to start swinging. I
can't say enough just how stunned I was at how good they felt to use. Like and
they felt just like God of War 3 or the other God of Wars. The combos and everything.
It was just like it, but in my mind, it felt better. It felt like I said, like that camera change is such a killer move for this game because it makes everything feel so much more intimate. And when you get those blades again, it's one of the coolest moments in a game for me in a long time.
Absolutely, for sure.
And I'm not like a diehard, like super mega God of War fan. Like I really enjoy the series and franchise. I really enjoy it a lot. Every game I've had a great time with. But this game just elevated the whole franchise to a whole other level for me. Like it's astounding. Yeah, that moment I cannot like. Oh.
Yeah, and even hearing people talk about people that this was their first God of War game that they've ever played, talking about how great that moment was, them getting the blades, because like they've seen it, all through the years, like these blades, how iconic these blades are. And then even somebody who hadn't played any of the other games, like I was hearing people talk about, like they still thought it was like the super impactful thing, like you're going back to your past and whatnot. And so even right after that, I think a moment that is kind of lost on people is when you're taking the like portal back to the bridge or whatnot, and Mimir makes those kind of quotes about like So are we gonna talk about, like, I knew you certainly weren't talking to me back there. And then Kratos just maybe doesn't even say anything or says something like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't even think he says anything. And then he says something to the fact of like, oh, by the way, I could have guessed you were Greek. And he's like, oh, and Athena, dead giveaway.
Yeah.
And it's just, Kratos is just still silent. Just even to the next part where he refers to him as the ghost of Sparta and such.
Yeah, Kratos talks when he needs to. It's something that's kind of been prevalent, I think, throughout the series. This game maybe a bit more so, but like he talks when he needs to talk, and if he doesn't need to, he doesn't. And like it's powerful in a weird way.
And it's not it's not awkward like Metal Gear Solid 5.
Right. And it's something that like I've also thought about a lot, especially coming off of like Infinity War. For instance, like we're coming off a lot of like franchises that are having big like injuries, where like a lot of things have been leading up to this. And while this is certainly kind of a soft reboot in some ways, what I really have been latching onto a lot with this game, and something I really love, is I love when you have entries in long-running franchises like this that can have those crazy moments calling back to something. I actually like. I love that they lean pretty heavy into Kratos' past, but not too much, just enough, but not too much to like ruin it. But I love that they do that because it makes everything that happens in this game and everything Kratos says to Atreus that much more powerful. Right. And like you can't do any of that without those 3 games. Like I love that they, instead of being like, well, let's reboot it, let's try to make Kratos an interesting character by just ignoring what a bunch of people hate about him. Instead, they latch onto it and they embrace it, and they say, no, we will use his one-note character of the past to strengthen the character he will become. And you can't do that without 6 games prior to this.
6 games prior. Yep.
And like, so you need those so that you can then use this game to go back to those and say, hey, like all these things are important for Kratos as a character, as we're going to try to turn him around and make him a bit more interesting and not just one specific emotion. And it only serves to further strengthen who Kratos is as a character. Just from a character perspective, not his own strength itself, but yeah, like the moments with Athena, the moments in Helheim, the way Kratos interacts with this world, as he meets different gods, and the way that he talks to Atreus, and the type of father that he is to Atreus, all of that comes together in basically the perfect way. Like I don't think it could have been done any better.
Yeah, for sure. We do get the moment that I really enjoy where Brock sees the blades. And he's like, whoa, what are those? And he just is really impressed with it. Which kind of leads me to another thing. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think when Atreus is healed or whatnot, I don't think Atreus ever makes a comment about the blades. I don't recall him ever saying anything about it.
Well, I think...
this is what I was hiding from you or whatnot.
So yeah, it's one of the things is we learn around that time that the sickness isn't necessarily some illness that's overtaking him. It's the fact that he's a god but doesn't know it. Right. And so it's in his innate godlike abilities that are being held captive because he doesn't know. And so that's his true nature. Yeah, its true nature is causing some sort of unbalance in him, which I thought was really interesting. And I think that makes for a lot of times that you have plot lines like that of like a sickness or something, and you kind of write yourself into a corner because the way to heal that sickness just never is that satisfying. In this case, I think it is because it makes sense. Like they establish rules for this illness, and the way to cure it is completely logical, and it's something that has to happen. He has to find out that he is a god. He has to find out who Kratos is. That's meaningful. And of course, and I don't know because I don't remember exactly the length and time between him being healed and Kratos telling him at least parts of the truth. Because I'm pretty sure that
Right.
there's a moment where Kratos reveals a little bit of information, and then
He
then it's a
does,
little
yeah.
later on where Kratos finally opens up. I think it's towards the end of the game actually, that Kratos
Yeah, it's
fully
like right at the
opens
end.
up. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a part earlier where he says who he is, tells basically just because of the nature of Kratos being a god, that also means Atreus is a god. And so that's
Yes.
of course where Kratos or Atreus has the line of like, "Can I turn into animals?"
Mm-hmm. It's a great line. Such a fantastic line. Can you turn into? Just even Kratos' reply back to that is great. And one thing that was interesting is Atreus' first animal he recommends is a wolf, which that's a very Loki thing apparently. Is like turning into a wolf or even turning into animals
For sure.
And whatnot. So this is the part where Atreus ends up basically being the spoiled brat, kind of, that kind of thing where he basically believes like, I'm a god, I can do anything, like I can do anything I want. That's where he ends up treating Sindri like crap. There's a part where Atreus just keeps talking about like, oh well, we can go do this, and like we can go kill all these people, and Mimir's like, are we just gonna let this go?
Yeah.
Like, are we just get like that was those were a fantastic moment.
I mean, I love the entire sequence of Atreus just turning into a horrible person.
So
go ahead.
I thought that might have been one of the lower parts of the game for me. I love the little touches where like he wouldn't use his bow sometimes, or if he did, he'd be like, whatever. And he would
because
shoot.
this is the part where you end up going back into the mountain.
Right,
Correct.
right.
So,
You're going
so yeah,
back
like
up.
that sequence in and of itself, because we're retreading common ground, like that definitely is maybe a bit slower, and it's not too terrible because it's mostly different, or you go some different routes.
Yeah.
But yeah, but from a story perspective, because that is where you end up running into what's his name?
Baldur again.
Not Baldur, one of the sons of Thor.
Yeah, it's Magni or Modi. Which one again?
One of the two. And that's where
the one you didn't kill.
The one you didn't kill, but then Atreus does, seemingly, if I remember correctly. And that's like a big breaking point moment. Because that's the moment where where Kratos starts to see Atreus go down the path that he has walked. It's like the thing he doesn't want Atreus to do at all. And I love that, like, because that does eventually reach to some sequences where, Kratos has to come down hard on Atreus.
Yeah. We are forgetting a little section. So actually, before we go back up to the mountain, we actually go into the early part of Tyr's temple,
right?
Where we end up seeing the kind of Greek, like wine glass or vases.
Right.
Of
oh my
his
god.
past.
Yeah, I forgot that was before then. There were so many things to say about this. I'll try to be quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. One, I loved seeing, because there's a part where Kratos holds up a vase with his own image in it. Excellent. Yep. I think we only ever see Greek stuff, if I remember correctly.
So this is the thing. I guess apparently, I remember when Atreus is like, he's got a mask, he's got like a helmet on or whatnot. Apparently that's like an Egyptian thing, I guess. Okay. So there's like different kinds.
Because I was definitely hoping to see other things, but I don't remember too much.
There is.
But this is also the point. So we start. So Tyr kind of comes into play. We start learning a lot about that character. And it wasn't necessarily then, but it was a little later on as we continued learning more about Tyr that I had a realization, and it didn't come true. But I definitely had a moment of like, oh, I bet Tyr's the big bad here.
Oh, okay.
I started thinking, what if that's where we're leading? What if because I feel like we're going to meet Tyr at some point. And sure. I definitely started to wonder, what if he will end up being the big bad in this game, even? Because I figured, it won't be Odin. Odin will be saved for later. So I thought maybe Tyr. Because we end up seeing like the images of Tyr like communicating with other other like mythologies. Yeah, like that's a really interesting thing
for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating, and to kind of get into some of the theories, there's a theory going around that people think Kratos is actually Tyr.
So that's really interesting for sure. I never even considered that, like the idea that
Yes.
Kratos. I don't know. I'm not gonna buy into it, but I like the theory.
Yeah, and it there's a lot of other kind of things as well, but one of it is part of them talking about Tyr was like really good friends with the giants, and then Faye, Kratos's wife, being a giant, and stuff like that. There's just a lot of there's things that people can definitely can Google. But there's a lot of speculation in that specific
definitely
respect.
briefly, because I'm sure we'll get into speculation towards the end. One thing I am hoping from this, when I beat this game, I was like in love with it, and still am, and I was super excited. And you see the end credits, or like that. It's not even an end credits sequence. It's you have to go back home to see it, but you see that scene.
Right.
And all the setup and all the build up that happens at the end of this game. And I had this moment of like sadness, because I figured, okay, it's probably gonna be 3 games, and I thought the sequel probably won't even be on PS4.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's safe to say, especially after some recent things happening in the industry.
Yeah.
But then I was like, I'll be like late 30s when this trilogy wraps up, and I was very, very sad about that. But no, brief speculation. One thing I really hope from this, whether it's a trilogy or whatever it ends up being, I would like to see glimpses of other mythologies come into play. That's not to say like I want it to be mostly contained in Norse, but when them introducing this idea of Tyr communicating with other mythologies is really interesting. And I mostly from the perspective, I don't want to have to wait another decade to see a third mythology come into play. I want to see snippets of it, even if it's little Easter eggs. I want to see that, because I really like where they're going, like at least where things are at the moment. I love this concept of, and it's something I've loved for a long time with God of War, is this ideal that all the different mythologies exist parallel
at
to
the
each
same
other.
time.
Yeah,
basically.
parallel to each other, and that's really fascinating to me. And so that's one really cool thing about having seen this game come to fruition now, and seeing a new mythology being brought into play. Like that's really awesome. And so, like seeing that sequence where they're like, and this is an image of Tyr talking to the other gods of different mythologies. It's like, oh my god, like yes, this is amazing. Like not that we didn't know, because there had been hints of it in the past, but it felt like this like final like confirmation of like all the stuff you've been speculating before. Like this is true. Like they all do exist parallel to each other, and that brings in its own set of stakes, or just like its own really interesting strolling for the word, it's
just like intricacies basically. and even kind of to piggyback off that a little bit, we talked about Zeus in Helheim, and the first time you see him, like I didn't think that was just a projection or memories or whatever. I thought that was actually him. And I would love the fact that when like Zeus dies in God of War 3, Kratos has killed Hades, and like the underworld is like no more. And like what if that's where Zeus went, was Helheim, because there was no Hades in Greek mythology anymore. And like if Zeus was actually alive in this other thing, like I was so fascinated by that, but then just it to kind of be like it's actually just a kind of projection thing. I was like, okay.
And I think it would. I think later on down the line, it would be interesting to. And I guess we kind of see it with Jotunheim at the end. If at some point we ever go back to Greece, even briefly.
Yeah, people talked about that. I would say no.
I don't necessarily think so, but just from the perspective of seeing what it is now, because it would be ruins essentially.
Yeah.
It's kind of the Final Fantasy X moment of returning to Xanarkand, if you will, and seeing this place that you live, that character lived in, just gone, just decimated.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And when I mentioned something about Revenge of the Sith earlier at the beginning of this podcast, I thought when Atreus is kind of becoming an a-hole, let's just use that, I was waiting for this to like, oh no, is this going to be something where we're going to have to like kill Atreus at the end?
Yeah.
Like Atreus is going to be like so powerful and he's going to be just so like turned by this fact that he's a god that like we're gonna have to like put him down. That was the thing.
Well, we'll get to it in speculation, but
exactly. Yeah. But yeah, we end up killing, I think it is Modi, I think is the one that actually we end up killing. And see, I actually thought he still might have been alive.
Because he kind of
rolled
dies
off the edge.
Yeah. So,
but it's the same way that Baldur supposedly died off screen.
Right. So there is a very real possibility that he will come back.
Right. But yeah, you get to the top, and Baldur is there to kind of ambush what is happening, which then leads to yet another pretty cool scene in the game where you're just on the back of a dragon.
Right.
The Tower of Jotunheim, that gate you were going to go through, gets destroyed. That was a pretty fascinating thing.
That is a cool sequence.
What ends up happening is you end up basically going back to Helheim. But the fact that I actually thought this was really going to turn real cool was when they're in. Oh well, man, we're skipping way ahead. The fact that Atreus shoots Kratos. Oh my goodness, that was another part where I thought, yeah, like he's going full bad guy, basically. That I thought Atreus was that. Kratos and Baldur are going to start going at it, and then Atreus literally shoots Kratos. And I thought that was going to be much more of a like punishment in the end. But there's the part where you're getting ready to go into the Bifrost, and Baldur is basically setting the Bifrost to Asgard, and he makes the comment like, when we get there, the entire force of Asgard is going to be here. So like Thor and Odin, like they're all just going to assault Kratos.
Yeah.
But then like Kratos is able to change it.
Let it not be said that when the time comes that we go to Asgard in one of these future God of War games, oh boy.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be phenomenal. And yeah, just even the part where like, what I remember is, when Kratos gets to the bridge and he's running all the way down the bridge and like through the doors and whatnot, and then he opens the doors, and at the like right by the Bifrost, Baldur is just standing there with his arms open, just like, come on, like welcome, like we're going to Asgard.
Yeah.
But he's able to kind of put in his own key or whatnot, and end up going back to Helheim, where then Atreus kind of sees kind of what he's done and kind of the monster he was for the past like hour or whatever in the game.
And we also get some pretty cool backstory for Baldur.
Yeah, I think that's where you find out that Freya is the mother.
Yeah, I was trying to think if that was the moment that you find out, because that's where a lot of the backstory comes into play, is between the two of them. So that stuff is great, and that of course builds up to what happens a little bit later, because I think that's when we learn, because Freya had mentioned something she had done in her past, and that's where we learn that like, oh, she's actually the reason for this. And that is also the sequence where you're on the boat. Yeah,
great sequence too.
So I was ready for that to be the moment where the Hydra shows up from God of War 1. Okay. That would have been like, cool, I honestly like sure. For about 5 seconds I was like, are they just gonna like throw the Hydra in here and we're gonna fight like the same boss fight just from this perspective? They didn't.
Yeah, that's cool.
They didn't. Yeah. But boy, I wish they did.
Yeah, that's so cool how like we have like different thoughts and stuff like that of just like random moments in our own speculation and whatnot. But yeah, you hear Zeus again kind of taunting, and you do it's so great with the moment where you do get Kratos and Atreus later on, you find out, seeing Zeus and the other flashback of Kratos attacking. And it's like literally beat for beat kind of that section at the end of God of War 3 where he throws the blades down and it literally goes first person just like God of War 3 and just starts beating on Zeus and just how they just replicated that just from like the end of God of War 3 I thought was incredible. But yeah, that's when you get diverted. Atreus kind of breaks up the little flashback or whatnot, and you guys are able to get back to Midgard. But yeah, even with Helheim, I thought like that giant Valkyrie kind of thing that was there, I thought that was gonna, I'm sure at some point
I imagine it will in the
come
future.
into play.
But that was like a really cool, just seeing it off in the distance and being like, what even is that?
For sure. And again, it's so many cool things that basically just tie this up. But that's when you do see that one panel where you see the other different religions. You see the Greek. You also see the like Celtic Christian. I think you see Egyptian.
Yeah, there's the different symbols, and Kratos is like, I recognize that one, or they talk about the Greek one for sure.
Right. Right. And it was part of like Odin. Like, so like Tyr, was like communicating with the other religions, but Odin was trying to figure out like how Tyr was doing it, but never really found out how. But eventually we go inside Tyr's temple even more. We end up flipping the temple, I believe, is at this point.
Yeah, super cool.
Just that. Those moments are just super. I mean, we're just saying like, it's super neat, super cool, or whatnot.
Well, it's not
so impactful.
There are other games out there that have level design in such a way that wrap in around themselves, or they flip, or they do crazy things without having to load anything. It's just like, oh, this is just how the level itself or the world itself is designed, and it's done in such a way that it makes sense and there's context for it, and it's always really impressive. And so this God of War adopts a lot of that, because it has to, in some respects. But it just, the moment, because they're trying to figure out how to open up the door to Jotunheim, and to do that they have to flip, the temple there or whatever. Yeah, Tyr's temple. Yep. And so the realization of doing that and having to do it, and then it happening is awesome, and it all makes sense. It works. There's context for it.
Yeah. So you flip the temple, you're ready to go to Jotunheim, but you find out you don't have like this other like the crystal that transfers you to Jotunheim is not there, where the other like part of the crystal, like one part is in Mimir's eye, but the other part was in that statue of Thor that the world serpent ate. Yeah. So then you really just go into the belly of the beast. And what did you think of that section where you're literally like driving the boat or whatnot through the stomach of the serpent?
I was like, how do they do this? I was like, how did this? How? It was completely like just bewilderment at how did they manage to do this?
Right.
Which was crazy to me. It was, but there's not much that I don't like about this game, if anything at all, really. But definitely the like, oh nope, you gotta get the other eye. It's like, all right, game.
It's a little bit of padding.
Yeah, I was like, all right. And a game that's already pretty beefy in and of itself. Now, granted, because of that, it's a very small detour. We get to go inside the snake. That's cool. But I definitely, in the moment, it was a bit of an eye roll of like, all right, game, come on.
Yeah, and it's really, and I was kind of even thinking about even thinking about like Game of Thrones, like as a show or like content or whatnot, that if you actually just look at like Game of Thrones, like that show moves, like especially like in the early season, that show moves pretty slowly. Like really, like you could feel like there's a lot of filler in there, but it's just the fact that the filler is so good is what makes it really cool. And I feel like that was kind of the same way with God of War. That like, like there's some filler sections.
There's
but they were also done really well.
A number of sequences of like, there's Jotunheim. Just kidding.
Yeah, like, oh, this is the top. Like, oh, no, not this tower. It's another tower or another mountain. Yeah, for sure. We end up finding out that the snake the serpent's having a little bit of trouble. Baldur starts attacking it to basically force Kratos and Atreus out, which then kind of leads into the final boss fight of the game. So you end up finding Baldur, and I think maybe then Freya shows up as well. But it's even the part where Kratos is standing there, and then Freya and Baldur are like, this is like the first time they've seen each other in such a long time.
Yeah.
They start arguing back and forth, and they literally tell Kratos just to stay out of it. But they still like just keep yelling at each other. Baldur keeps like walking towards Freya, and then Kratos just kind of sticks out his like left arm and just kind of like pushes him back a little bit. Like, no, like I am not going to stay on the sideline for this. And then even just that little shrug of Baldur, just like, I don't want to.
I think it's a little later on. Maybe it's after the fight itself, but because there is a line from Kratos where he's like, "We end this. Like, we have to end this cycle here."
That is actually right before he kills Baldur.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure it's after the fight itself, but. And we can get to that. Like, so the fight, the boss fight with Baldur, and to a lesser extent Freya, and in some respects.
Yeah. And do you want to know something interesting about that line at the end of the fight where Kratos says the cycle ends here? I believe that is the exact words that Zeus said to Kratos at the beginning of God of War 2, where he was stabbing him with the blade of Olympus. Yeah. I think Zeus says the cycle ends here, of like, people trying to kill their fathers and whatnot. Because I think like even in Greek mythology, I think Zeus ended up killing his father, which was one of the Titans or something like that. But yeah, this entire last fight with Baldur, where also Freya is just kind of manipulating
the giant.
Yeah, the giant that was there. Just the kind of I guess the word I'll use is like aerobatics between Atreus and Kratos was so cool, especially part towards the end where Kratos and Baldur and even Atreus are like falling through the air, and Atreus is literally just like shooting arrows at Baldur while he's like flying through the air. I like that was just part of like really everything is just coming together in such a cool way.
And it's like another example of like Sony Santa Monica and Naughty Dog like taking like switching crowns every time they put a game out. It's like, oh no, we're gonna one up you here. It's like, you get Joel and Ellie, and like Ellie is like, oh no, she's a really great like side character and she's not useless.
Right.
And now Atreus is like, dude, Atreus is wrecking stuff. Like he's taking down dark elves, killing gods. Like
yeah. So that fight kind of continues a little bit, and of course towards the last section of that fight, the giant titan is like about to inhale or something, like kill Atreus and Kratos. I literally just said almost Atreus, that seems like the new name for both of them.
That's it, canon.
Atreus, where Atreus calls on the serpent to kind of come in and attack the titan or whatever that was there, the titan or giant or whichever words they use nowadays. I just so many great moments, and we keep saying that, but just like moments that I wish there was a chapter select in this game. Like, there is not enough save files in this game that like I just want to go back and just experience. Like, if I could go back and just do the dragon fight, or if I could go back and just do the final boss fight with Baldur.
I've come to find more and more there's so many examples of games where it's like I just want to like watch a movie cut.
Oh,
Not
for
because
sure.
I don't want to didn't like playing them, but it's like sometimes like their stories or moments that are so good or interesting that I just want to experience them again without having to spend the 30 odd hours. Danganronpa is a great example of that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like, you know, whenever a new game comes out, it's like whatever full movie or whatnot, which is literally just like all the cutscenes together. But so Baldur is kind of defeated. Kratos is going to literally suffocate him, but it's kind of a callback to Modi before he dies, the second of Thor's sons, that Atreus basically tells Kratos to like lay off, like he's beaten, basically, like there's no need to kill him. That's really a really struggling moment for Kratos, because like it's just so much easier to say than actually do, because I think Kratos is really caught off guard in that section, because like he would have probably just killed him.
And what difference would it have made to Kratos, right? Like he's done this.
He does it anyway
for the majority of his adult life. Like this is what he does. He kills gods. Yeah,
exactly. But I think we alluded to it earlier. Freya's best scene is this ending moment where Freya is basically allowing herself to die for Baldur, as long as like that would make Baldur happy. And this is part of Kratos's talk of, this isn't going to solve this. Like, if you kill her, trust me, this revenge doesn't
stop. Like, this is where we end the cycle. But for Freya's perspective, like, it makes sense. Like, you know, this is, we know she has been she was tormented by the vision that she had of her son dying, and so she seeks out to prevent it by making it impossible for him to die. But in doing so, she torments him. It destroys him. It eats at him every single day. He is constantly looking for ways to feel something. And so I think she comes to understand it, and it's like, well, if this will make him happy, like, I'll let him do it. You know, I'll sacrifice myself if that'll be the thing that makes him happy, because I don't want him to die. Even still, even after everything, she's like, I don't want to take that from him.
Yeah.
Which is still like, it's sort of selfish in a weird way. You know, it's thinking more about herself and her not wanting to lose something, whereas she knows, like, she has cursed him into not even feeling anything, not even just pain, but just anything.
Yeah.
And we get to see what that like, he kind of, it's almost a joke to him at first, or at least when we first meet him, but we see how it tears at him, especially in the Helheim sequences. So yeah, it's, and of course with him, I don't remember exactly how it all plays out, but Baldur does end up getting killed. Because they discover a sort of weakness that we can use to kill him, and in doing so, Freya, we unleash the anger that she has been holding within herself, and I think that is one plot line, and for sure that is going to be really fascinating to watch play out over the next game or however many games.
Yeah, and that was definitely a moment where like I was anticipating, like, the part where like I feel like this clearly could have just been easy writing for like any other game, you know, where like, you know, Kratos kills Baldur, and then Freya looks up, like, she could have just been like, what have you done, like that kind of like, why did you do this kind of thing. But like, no, it's literally just this moment of just silence, and then just like, I am going to do all of these terrible things.
Yeah, I don't remember the phrasing. She's like, I will unleash the wrath of all the realms, or something like that.
Yeah, I will drag your body through the vilest places of Helheim, or whatever it was, through all the realms. So then it comes to the moment where Freya makes a comment saying like, that's you're an animal, this is all you do, you're a monster, kind of thing, and basically saying like, you will never change. And Kratos makes the comment, and then, you do not know me. And Freya says like, yeah, but does he know, meaning Atreus.
And so this is the moment where Kratos opens up completely. And basically, and it's in the way like. So one, I didn't realize that the voice actor for Kratos in this game is different.
Yeah,
You know,
it's not the original guy.
It was something I didn't realize until I think weeks after release.
Oh, okay.
It just never occurred to me. I didn't look it up or anything.
Yeah,
I feel like it sounds pretty similar.
I thought so too. Yeah, definitely lower, but not as
but it makes
yelling
sense,
and projecting.
right? Like it made sense. It was a good fit. And I guess I was surprised that no one really. It wasn't something that people talked about more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, especially when you see how people reacted for Metal Gear Solid 5. And granted, maybe that was a bigger deal. I don't know. Maybe people care probably more for David Hayter's performance. Whereas I don't know that I could necessarily name. I know what he looks like, but I can't name the person who originally voiced Kratos.
Yeah, I can't think of his name right now. Yeah,
but regardless of that, like the acting in this game the voice acting in this game is incredible, and especially and especially for Kratos, because in that moment, like it's just such a like deadpan, monotone delivery of like, listen, boy, like I have killed gods. This is who I am. Yeah, and like it's not some like emotional like, come here, let me tell you, like this is hard.
That's exactly.
Don't be.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was gonna say.
You shouldn't be this, or like it's just like this is who I am. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like he's saying that to his son. Like, and that's yeah.
It's just the simple boy, listen close, and then I am from a land called Sparta. And then basically kind of saying that I've killed like many gods, many who were deserving and many who were not. Which I always find it funny that people have talked about. He forgets to leave out that, oh yeah, I killed my family and I wear their ashes for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's a thing that'll come up later. I have no idea. But basically talking about that we're going to be different, and Atreus makes the comment that like is this what happens? Like sons just killing their fathers, their mothers, and whatnot. And Atreus saying like we are going to be the gods like we want to be
better.
Exactly.
The phrase that is repeated throughout this game, and I don't think we've heard the end of that phrase. I think that's going to continue to be a theme for this new trilogy, or however many games. I think 3 is safe. I think 3 is a safe bet. It feels like
I would say so. And there was this whole thing that I think it might have been Jason Schreier had like a little like
there was kind of like some misreporting going on.
Yeah, where it was basically the question was like in your mind, how many games do you have in your head or something like that for God of War? And like it was basically just this kind of like, I don't know, like 5, maybe like he's got like 5 different ideas for games, and people took that as like, oh, there's 5 games playing. I was like, no, like
or
that's
5
not
more
really...
future.
Yeah, like he's got 5 different ideas, but people just took that as in like, oh, okay, there's 5 games playing.
Right, and we'll dig into it a bit more. We just got a little bit more to cover, but like the be better line, I think. I like it a lot, but it's definitely a theme that I think will continue to carry out through the rest of at least the Norse line of God of War games. And we see it. So the fight ends. They leave Freya, and we get to Jotunheim. Yeah. And it's basically at that point where I realized I was like, oh, I'm at the end of the game. And I also realized, this is it. That was probably the final boss, because I don't at the moment I don't think I realized that was the last fight. And Jotunheim's pretty short, but there's some heavy stuff to unpack in Jotunheim.
Absolutely.
First of which, we see there's some talking as we kind of ascend, and we get to like a temple area. There's some drawings on the wall. We see some stuff. We see. I think this is where we learn that that Atreus' mom is a giant. Did we know that at that point? I don't think we do, right?
No, we didn't know that. We didn't know until that point that Faye was a giant.
And we kind of we also like see that the entire journey has been drawn out. We kind of learned that she has planned this. She's known from the beginning that this is going to happen. And of course,
she's walked the entire path.
yeah.
It's like all those, yeah.
And of course, the final thing that we see that's not really, they don't talk about it at all, but it's probably the most important image that we see there, is one of Atreus seemingly killing Kratos.
Right.
Yeah. It appears to be that way at the very least.
There's that, and then there's like people talking about that it's like Atreus giving birth to the world.
Well, yeah, so there's that as well, stuff. Which we know due to a reveal that happens a few minutes later. We know what that means. We understand the significance of that.
Right.
So yeah, so they go up, they spread the ashes. We get to see all the giants
Great
dead.
moment. Such a somber, amazing
really,
moment.
Yeah.
The other moment I was going to say right before that, when they're both kind of holding their arms out, spreading the ashes. That was the other moment that I immediately just like clicked the share button on my, or not the, whatever, the to for a screenshot on my PS4. I thought that was like a beautiful kind of backdrop, the moment they had.
For sure. So that happens. They're starting to.
And then the big reveal.
Starting to walk down. I'll just kind of take you through my own personal reaction.
Okay.
And you know, I never suspected this. It was never something that I thought, oh, I wonder. Because I think we always assumed that like the identity of Atreus would probably be a big deal, or at least what his powers were, or like what, you know, Atreus' future always was a big deal. It would be some big thing in the story, but I never suspected that he would be who we learned that he is.
Right.
And so there's the sequence where Atreus is like, there's something bothering me, you know, something like all those pictures, they're of me, but they don't refer to me as Atreus. They refer to me.
They got my name
wrong. They call me Loki. And when that happened, I'm like sitting on the floor in the living room, like in front of the TV, intently watching. That happens. I like can drop the controller, stand up, hands over mouth, like just in complete shock, and just like jaw dropped. Trying to listen intently as to what they are continuing to say after the point, because I don't pause the game. I like losing my mind. And of course, Kratos tells the story of like how, you know, his mother wanted to name him Loki. He wanted to name him Atreus. Who Atreus was.
A Spartan.
And
it's basically right after that moment, because you basically get kind of those end credits, those beginning of end credits, right after that. But yeah, just the Loki reveal, I wasn't that big, but it was basically just kind of like mouth open, eyes widen moment. Like, whoa, like was not expecting that.
It is so cool.
One bit.
It's such a cool reveal.
And another thing that Cory Barlog mentioned was that I guess from the get-go they never planned that. Like they never planned for him to be Loki until
later on
the end. That was like, hey, what if we just refer to him, like what if we say that he's Loki? So
which
did you
I'll say this, and this is one of those things where like I don't know how this new plot line has been written out, but as someone who has like tried to write stories before, there's part of me that like really wanted to believe and was kind of let down that they did not plan on it from the beginning,
right?
Because I want to believe that like they had the Loki reveal and everything planned out, but obviously that's not how it works. That's not how writing works. Sometimes you just change things because they fit better. But anyways, go ahead.
So we hear a little bit about who Atreus in Sparta was, and so there's a part where he's like, you know, he died, he sacrificed, and I buried him with Spartan customs or whatnot, and immediately I'm trying to think of just like super angry Kratos, trying to do this. And
it had been so long since I played Ghost of Sparta. I was trying to remember her like. Was that his brother's name? Like, what? because I couldn't remember the name of the brother, and so I was like, maybe that was it was Deimos, yeah. But I was like, maybe that was Atreus, like maybe because like, and it's not, obviously it wasn't his brother, and like obviously he does have a long heartfelt story about who Atreus is, because it's like it must obviously be someone pretty important to him to want to use that name. But the Loki reveal is so good. It's so good because like it's one of those. It's great because then you also it paints. You have Atreus as we know him before that, and you were like, okay, I can kind of see maybe where his character might be taken in the next few games. But then we learned that he's Loki, and all of that's been flipped on its head now, and that's super
and just
exciting.
The wheels in your mind, just like what is happening, like what is gonna happen. Now it just kind of goes. So we're basically told to head home. Yeah. Or even we should head home.
Before you head home,
okay,
we learned that the events of this game and what Kratos has done has ushered in Ragnarok.
Right.
They kind of mention it. You get to kind of see, when you enter the outside.
Thimbleweather is what they call it.
Thimbleweather, so it's the beginnings of Ragnarok, and so obviously the next game, we'll be seeing Ragnarok ushered in. That'll be super exciting. That's really cool. Like that's a really awesome premise for a game, just in and of itself. So that happens, and then we return home.
So did you immediately go home after that? So I didn't, because I didn't know how to get home. I didn't know you absolutely had to take the the portal there. So I was like just trying to like, okay, well obviously, because I thought there was like a land that I hadn't explored yet. I thought there was going to be like, oh, okay, well one of these side areas that I hadn't done yet, okay, that'll lead back to the main home area. So I was trying to do that, and then eventually I ended up seeing what ended up happening there. So I didn't that part, I guess technically got spoiled for me.
Oh, it's too bad.
But I assumed something was going to happen. Like something's going to happen at home. I just didn't know how to get back there, and I hadn't used one of the
I think I had heard like just a simple make sure you go home. And so I did that. And I didn't, again, I don't think I really had any theories or any suspicions of like what could happen, because there was even like it's even like there was a little like subtitle of like it's 3 years later or 5 years later. I think 5, right?
I think it's just years later.
Oh, maybe, okay.
Because I think they say that Thimbleweather is supposed to last like 3 years.
So yeah, however many years.
And then I think it's I think it's just years.
So it's years later, and you hear someone arrive outside, and it's kind of this now what reaction. And you open the door and you see Thor, and it's if that's not the cool, like, that's not
freaking
like,
revolver ocelot, like gunslinger thing. You basically just get the who are you, and then just
and you see the pullback, the hammer, and you mentioned Metal Gear. It's like this is now another franchise that gets to have those moments. And I talked about how like mysterious a lot of this game is with Norse mythology and the gods, and how we hear of them but don't see them. It's like when we get the next entry and we see like Thor is going to be in the next game, without a doubt. And so like when we see Thor, or we see Odin eventually, and you see different gods like show up that like we know or people just know about, like when those things happen, that's going to be super exciting. It's something I'm really excited about for Kingdom Hearts 3 is like I know that game's just going to be chock full of like super fan service heavy moments, but they're going to be great and they're going to feel good when I get to those moments. So yeah, like I think that little tease at the end is definitely a tease in every right, but I love it. I love stuff like that.
It's and then even after that, it's like present day. After that, the full credits happen, and he was like, "Oh, I had this weirdest dream, but it felt so." Yeah, it was like Fimbulwinter's ending, but it felt so real or whatnot. Yeah, basically just like this is. it's almost a thing that's like I wouldn't be surprised if that's like the beginning of the next God of War.
That'd be pretty great.
Is that like that opening scene is like the beginning?
Is it opens up again with
game.
like some other stranger showing up?
Right. For sure. So like it'd be interesting to see like. So obviously there's other realms we've yet to explore. We had the 2 optional ones, but like I wonder how much they're going. Like, I mean, you pretty much have to assume Asgard's in the next one, and maybe another one. But like, do they rely on like a new area of Midgard? Like, do they still put that as like a
well, I thought about that, but I think in this moment right now, my thoughts are with Ragnarok probably being a pretty major part. I don't necessarily, I don't know the intricacies of what Ragnarok is other than just at a very basic level, but I wonder if that would allow them to maybe change the landscape itself.
I was thinking that
so
too.
that from a level design perspective, we're not running through the same stuff again. And we'll probably go to some of the other realms that we didn't visit in this game. Midgard probably, for sure.
Asgard, you mean?
And
they're kind of confusing.
Yes, Asgard.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's confusing. Yeah.
And I mean, you also wonder like what the plot line, for the next game will be. Because, but for all intents, like, this game does leave on some 2 pretty substantial cliffhangers, or I guess 3. I don't. It leaves on some pretty substantial stuff of Loki, Thor, and Ragnarok. But
Freya, or just all this other
Freya
stuff
as well. But their journey itself came to an end. They finished their task. That's it. It wrapped up. And so like, what will? And it's not like the other God of War games where the through line was always, I'm gonna kill some gods. I'm mad at them. And so we don't know. Like Kratos has no reason, nor would he. I imagine be all that amped up to go chasing after Thor and Odin. So you wonder like what will be the through line now. I mean, I could imagine that the fact that they've brought about Ragnarok could be maybe the premise of this of like, well, the fact that they did that, maybe that's angered some people or maybe that's going to bring the gods to them.
I think there's going to be something where another god, and I was maybe even thinking like Odin, like there's going to be some kind of like twist that there's another god in Norse mythology that actually sides with Kratos. That, because I keep getting hung up on it wasn't the exact kind of moment when they used it in the trailer, is this last E3 where the serpent shows up and you're like, okay, like here comes the big boss fight, I guess, with the serpent, and Atreus goes like, he's here to help us. I think there's probably, I could see like Kratos and Thor going at it, and then even like Odin saying something like, I'll make a bargain with you kind of thing. Like, I don't know, just kind of something to that effect.
I definitely feel like the Kratos and Thor fight is like gonna be the single thing I look forward to the most. Out of anything in the next game, like,
like is the Kratos Thor fight gonna be like the Kratos Poseidon fight at the beginning of God of War 3? Like how massive that fight and scale.
Like I wanted to be several fights. Like if we got to fight, what's his name? Like 3 different times in this game. I want Baldur. I want Thor and Kratos to go down, and several times. Let's let them duke it out a few rounds.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Because like I think when you think about before this game's revealed, when you think about God of War going to Norse mythology, you could it probably wasn't too outlandish to say like, what if we play as Thor?
Sure.
So dude, like, I'm super excited about that, and I'm endlessly curious to see where they take Atreus / Loki. Where does that character go from here? Is this ideal of being better? How does that change? Because that's the thing, right? Is like Kratos is doing everything in his power to ensure that Atreus does not become what he is. And that's when, of course, the Loki reveal really flips things on its head, because like Kratos probably wouldn't want Atreus to be the Loki that we know, or the Loki of Norse mythology. Like he probably doesn't want that. Like I would imagine. And
yeah, and that was the whole point of not telling
right.
him, was that he didn't even want him to know.
And the whole
so
image of Atreus possibly killing Kratos, like that's a whole other thing to consider.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, and it makes you wonder, like, you know, are we leading to a future where we play as Atreus?
You'd have to assume,
like,
so.
Are we getting to the point where Kratos will finally be put into retirement or put to rest, and this series gets a new playable character? That seems like a really huge step, but I wonder if maybe we're leading to that.
Yeah, I certainly see it that way, and I even wonder, like, even with a God of War 2, you know, in this kind of section, is this going to be a thing where, like, we only play as, like, Kratos for, like, 2 hours and then he's dead, and then, like, the whole rest of the game, like, is the prologue in the next God of War going to be just you play as Kratos, but then after that it is you as Atreus the whole game?
God of War Solid, Sons of Liberty.
See, I was thinking of, like, Metal Gear Solid 2, you know, just like, oh, you're playing
like,
a snake. Like,
no. Yeah, I mean, could you imagine, right? Like, all we see of it is just Kratos gameplay.
Yeah.
And then it comes out, Thor kills Kratos. Atreus. Like, and the rest of the game is a revenge plot in which Atreus becomes Loki, and the final boss is a Loki v Thor showdown.
Right, and then he gets the Infinity Stones.
And then he gets the Infinity Stone.
Yeah. So did you ever go back to like Freya's house after the game?
I think in some cleanup, but I don't think I actually went into the house itself.
So you can't go into the house, but if you're in that kind of underground area, Mimir makes some comment like, I wouldn't go back in there. Like, she's probably plotting all of the terrible things she's going to do. But then kind of even alludes to, like, Kratos kind of talking like, I think that she's actually not going to be, like, against us in the future. That, like, she is going to learn that, like, that was, like, the only choice. It's just she can't see that right now. So, like, it almost was kind of a thing that, you know, Kratos doesn't seem like all that worried about her, because he thinks, like, she's gonna come around in the future. But you know, who knows? I could still see her coming out of here and just being the complete bad guy, and I think that's a cool premise, that, you know, she's an ally here, but then the next game she's a complete enemy.
For sure. And Kratos, of course, being wise beyond his years, and just not be like, Kratos has reached a point, like, why should he be concerned? The only thing he's concerned with is is the future of his son, and not necessarily his son's safety, but what his son will become. Which I think is interesting.
And even part of that thing, like, why would Atreus asking, like, why would she let her son kill her? Like, he's like, oh, but if it would make her happy or would make him safe or something like that. And like, but you wouldn't do, like, would you die? Like, would you sacrifice yourself to save me? And, like, it was just kind of those learning moments of, you know, even, like, fatherhood and being a parent and stuff that he's learning. But yeah, I don't know if there's too much else you wanted to talk about specific. We're going on about close to, like, 2 hours now.
Yeah.
But like, there's so many cool just gameplay things we could touch on, where there'd be the axe and recalling the axe.
Yeah, just real quick, like, the combat in this game feels fantastic. Everything you just said, like, the axe itself feels great. Like, calling feeling the axe come to you, like, throwing it and having it come back has an impact to it. Right. We touched on the chains already, the Blades of Chaos already. The dynamic, once you get those weapons too, and all your different abilities, like the different tools you have at your disposal when you're fighting, like, hordes of enemies, all of it feels incredible. Like,
the progression system, the other attacks that are references, like the Blades of Chaos attacks that are references to other different things. Like, even the Valkyries, the Valkyrie
fights are really
cool. Out that Freya is actually the queen of the Valkyries.
Mm-hmm.
She was at one point, and Freya was married to Odin at one point.
Yeah, there's a ton of like side stuff you can dig into with like some different lore that you can.
Oh, Mimir is just
Mimir's got
chock-full.
tons of stories.
So
Kratos has stories.
That very much true. Yeah.
Hearing Kratos tell the story of like the rabbit, the hare, and the tortoise, the weirdest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, and everything about this game, top to bottom, is fantastic.
Yeah.
And as far as speculation is concerned, I think we definitely touched on the stuff that I've thought about.
Right. Yeah.
I hope, man, I hope that the turnaround time of the next game isn't too terribly long.
I don't think it would be.
Hopefully.
I don't think it'll be 5, but probably still 3 or 4 maybe.
It's like the same thing when I beat Horizon. It's like, oh, I don't. I want the next one. I want to see where this story goes.
But then you don't want to be in. But would you rather be in the like, well, I have to wait 5 years, or would you rather be in the Metal Gear Solid 5 of like, well, I guess this is it. We're not getting any more.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, don't talk. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm bringing up Metal Gear to way too much in this thing. But yeah, even a couple things that I even want to mention. The Spartan Rage, I feel like there's a lot of like super meters in games. I think this is probably one of the most satisfying that I've ever played. The fact of like having an enemy right next to you, hitting L3 R3, doing the Spartan Rage, and like an enemy getting blown back a little bit, and like the first move Kratos has is he jumps up in the air and slams him back to the ground. I think is so cool.
Everything about this game is super satisfying.
Yeah, and like even part that made me think of BioShock Infinite. Did you ever play that? I can't remember if we talked about BioShock Infinite a long time ago, but like just gameplay wise of like if you're running towards an objective, like Elizabeth would run in front of you. And there would be times that like if you didn't immediately just run into a fight, like if you're just kind of walking or stopping and you saw enemies like ahead of you, Atreus would run ahead of you and take a knee and take out his bow and just kind of be like,
be ready
whenever you're ready. And it's just like super cool stuff like that. That it's just
a lot of
that
small
fine
little
comb
touches.
that's over and over and over again. And one everybody talks about is, only tell stories on the boat. Like hey, we're on land, we're not telling stories anymore.
It's like I mentioned, it's like we saw in Uncharted 4, like when the sequence where you're driving in the big open area, and when you're driving, they're talking, and when you get out, they'll be like, we'll wrap this up in a bit, and you get back in, and it's like, well, anyways, what I was saying was, they do the exact
It's almost
same
like
thing.
Naughty Dog and Santa Monica are trying to one-up
Weird,
each other.
I don't know. It's interesting that you bring that up. But no, it's absolutely that, and it works, and like, so why not take it? Why not say, let's do that in our game too, because it works, and it solves an issue. It's a really great solution to an issue that's been in a lot of older games.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess thing I'd ask you, did you end up platinuming the game?
I did not. I don't think I will. I did a few of the Valkyrie fights. I didn't feel like going through the kind of optional realms.
The 2 realms.
There's the one that was like that's rare, that you're like grinding for material.
Yeah,
and it felt like very Destiny to me, and I was like, I'm good.
Well, there's basically best way I can describe it is Muspelheim, which is kind of like a lava.
So I did all of that except for the Valkyrie fight.
Oh, okay.
I tried that Valkyrie a few times, and I was like, I don't have that. I'm not leveled up enough for this. Sure.
That realm basically felt to me like when you would beat a God of War game previously, you'd have like the test of the gods or whatever. You'd have those like 10 challenges that you'd have to do certain things. That's what that felt like to me. And then the other one being, I think it was Niflheim.
Yep.
I think it was that one. It is like you're kind of you're grinding for these things called Mist Echoes, and basically it's like a roguelike.
Yeah.
So like
it's cool.
Each time you enter this area, it's brand new.
They're both really cool.
If you die, you lose everything.
Yeah, both of them are really cool, and I did spend a decent amount of time in them. But I at that point I had spent a significant amount of time with God of War, and I was ready to move on.
Yeah, and the last fight with the final Valkyrie, it's still kind of the same kind of, by the numbers, but it's really cool where, you have those like tears or whatnot, and you reach in, you pull something out, or and then like, so, like there's actually an enemy that comes by. The part where you put all of the crowns of the Valkyries like on their resting places or whatnot opens up one of those tears, and Kratos goes in and he just like sticks his fingers in, and immediately the like head Valkyrie just busts through and just like grabs Kratos and just shoves him to the ground. It's like really kind of like a jump scare kind of.
I should definitely look it up.
Like
I never watched a video of it. I should look it up.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But then that's basically what you learn, that like Freya is like the only queen of the Valkyries and whatnot, with stuff that might come in later. But yeah, I went ahead and got the platinum. And a lot of it, I actually didn't even use the guide. There was only, I think, like one Raven that I actually went back for and used the guide to actually find. And so a lot of people complained about the Ravens.
I made a good way into the game. And I just like ran. I don't know why. I just threw an axe at the Raven, and I was like, "Oh!" And like a little popped up of like a 1 out of however many found.
51, I think.
And I definitely had a like moment. I was like, "Oh crap!"
Yeah. I kind of enjoyed just walking around, just like looking in the environment, trying to find this little lime green crystal bird, kind of flying around. Sure. But yeah, a lot of collectibles, a lot of different upgradable stuff. Like that runic system is really deep. Like if you have a certain amount of runic, that makes some of your other unlockable skill points like even more powerful. So I feel like that's so much. Everything about this, in a complete reinvention of a franchise, is so much deeper. Whereas, instead of getting red orbs and just holding X until it fills up a number, and then like, great, you unlocked more damage and 3 moves, which square, square, triangle, and triangle, triangle, square. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's your moves. Where like this is just so much deeper and cooler and different equipment to wear.
It's deeper. It's got great customization. A lot of choices. Even just in how you approach different combat scenarios. Like, it's great. It's fantastic. Like they killed it. They knocked it out of the park.
I said it, I think, when the first time I talked to you about it, I have never seen a franchise just completely reinvented like this, other than maybe, and granted I haven't played it, but like maybe Breath of the Wild, going back to like its original roots or whatnot. But
I mean, just RE4 maybe.
I could probably say that for sure. Greatest game of all time. And even I think we talked about it very, very lightly, even like a week or so before this, that I felt like God of War felt very Resident Evil 4 to me.
Sure.
And either just be the camera's perspective, or just the kind of like side things you can do, or just like, it's a super, super light RPG in there. Like at the same time, like it's still like focused on the shooting and focused on the action, but like, hey, like you can level up these guns, or level up the axe, or all these kinds of different things. But I think that's probably gonna wrap up. This long talk.
Running pretty long. But it was good.
Yeah,
I think safe to say we're both very, very excited about the future of God of War.
Yeah, absolutely. And Curtis, I will just leave us off saying I look forward to our God of War 2 spoiler cast in 2023.
Yep. And that'll be that we'll record that a week after the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 of Spoilercast.
Yeah.
Which I'm also looking forward to quite as well. Or quite as much. I'm quite looking forward to it much quite. Be better.
Kratos for Smash.
Be better.
Hashtag be better, the sequel, hashtag become better. Well, thanks for watching, listening.
Being better.